Hello, welcome to the channel and thanks for watching. So 40k is dead, long live the Horus Heresy. That's a bold statement, 40k is dead, but it is some conclusion I came to whilst prepping these Horus Heresy models and something I've been thinking of for a few months now, my relationship with 40k and what I think about it. Not the entirety of 40k, I am talking specifically about 9th edition. And we'll come back onto that in a second, but I'm going to talk first just a little bit about the prep work I'm doing on my Horus Heresy models that kind of led me to this conclusion, or helped to get me to that conclusion. So you can see in the background there I'm prepping my Horus Heresy models. This channel's all about really doing what pops into my head and what I fancy at the moment. Now, I will bounce around different game systems, as you've seen if you've subscribed. A bit of a hint, subscribe below if you like what I'm talking about. But at the moment, Horus Heresy's got me quite entertained and quite interested. Obviously the release has come out, I've done videos on it, I've done the unboxing. Now I'm going to talk about really how I'm prepping my models. So I've built all the miniatures, I'm just prepping them all in one big batch. I'm not going to show every single bit of prep, just at super speed in the background, just a few pieces. The first bit I'm doing is going around and having an extra clean up. Now I do clean the models up as I go, as I'm building them, but you always miss things. So as a bit of a guide, before you start undercoating, when you're getting ready to paint, just have another check over, because when you find those mold lines when you're painting, it's not too late. You can fix them when you've already undercoated them and stuff, but it just is a lot harder. So have that other go, because nothing ruins a paint job more than a mold line showing up when you're doing your dry brushing or whatever. So quick check. Now bolters, do you need to drill them? No, you absolutely do not. Not a problem to paint the models with the barrels not drilled out, but it does add a little bit of extra depth. Now back in the day I used to drill down the front of the gun, and also I used to take a really fine drill bit and drill through the sides of the barrels as well, where those exhaust vents kind of are at the front. But I don't do that anymore. I just kind of tend to do the barrels. I might do the occasional drill through the side. Now hints and tips when you're doing it: take your scalpel or whatever knife you're using and make sure there's no mold line running across the barrel. They quite frequently do cast these so that there will be a mold line running down the barrel. You can see there I've just literally ran the blade and sliced that mold line off, because that mold line there can knock your drill slightly off centre and off kilter, and you can ruin the barrel. Second tip: practice on a gun that's not on a model first. So if you wreck it for your first few times of giving it a go, doesn't matter. Now what I use is then the end of the blade, stab a little guide hole in the direct centre of the barrel, and that just stops the end of the pin drill slipping when you're doing it. Pin drill it through. Dead simple, done. Use a pin drill that's just wide enough to fill probably 3/4 of the barrel at least, so that you've still got a bit of gap around the edge. That's what I've found, and it just adds a nice little bit of detail into your bolters. So as I was prepping these 30k models, I did then start thinking about why I've got excited about 30k, what inspires me to it, got me excited. Now, there's always the piece of its original Marines, and the Horus Heresy in the background is all fantastic, and that is not what's putting me off 40k at the moment. I'm still painting a 40k Nurgle army, I'm still building my Death Guard, but not with the enthusiasm that I once was. Now, why is that? It's not because of the models. Now, the models I'm doing here for 30k are no better than 40k models. Workshop haven't suddenly started doing a disastrous range of 40k models or anything like that. The models that Games Workshop are producing for 40k are some of the best they've ever produced. In fact, I would say they are the best they've ever produced, and that echoes into 30k as well. So it's not the models that's putting me off 40k at the moment. I tend to build and prep armies based on games coming up with my mates, or if we've got a big game coming up, whatever, I'll be excited to build those. Now, you might then say, well, you've just shown a big 10,000 point game with your Death Guard on the channel recently, and you've talked about how you were building up towards that, and we did that big 10,000 point game, played a Titan, it was fantastic. So is it that stopped me getting excited in 40k? No, it isn't, because in a couple of weeks after filming this video, I'm across with a bunch of mates in Leeds. I live in Yorkshire, in the north of England, going across there, and we're playing a little weekend sort of mini tournament amongst ourselves with 40k. And I'm taking some models that I really need to get around to painting and doing, but I'm just not super inspired. And why is that? It's not the background of 40k. It's not the miniatures that 40k have, because they're stunning, and I'm really excited about converting them in some senses, but I'm not enthralled. It's the rules themselves. Now, why is that I'm excited about 30k? Because conversely, I've not got games of 30k coming up. I haven't. I've not planned any games of 30k. This is purely because I want to do them, and I'll do a few practice games and whatever, and I'll get the lads involved and we'll play some games together. But I haven't got a big event geared up. This is purely because I've been reading through the 30k rulebook. I've been reading through the army lists, as they're called. I bought the Traitor Legions Astartes army book, and it's genuinely getting me excited about planning and building an army, unlike 9th edition. So we'll touch back on what I'm doing on the bases here very briefly before carrying on the rant. I'm going for fairly simple bases. I can do very, very convoluted bases in, doing green stuff and green stuff rollers and all those kind of things that I've shown on the channel before. I wanted to do something fairly basic. The beauty of the Death Guard army, and that's what these are going to be, in the background is they're very kind of irradiate a world, destroy it, use prohibited weapons, all those kind of things that obviously lead to their eventual fall in some senses when you look at the background. And I wanted to reflect that on the bases, and I thought, what's better than having, skulls and those kind of things around that look like a devastated wasteland. Now, obviously, in a real world setting, if you had an irradiated wasteland, there wouldn't just be skulls dotted around, but it kind of looks cool. So I'm going for simple skulls, 1 or 2 or 3, glued in every single base from the Citadel skull set, and then I'm using the Glenn textured paste here, which if you've watched the channel, I use this a lot, but mostly on armour to make cracked, damaged armour effects. So I'm doing that, pasting a nice layer onto the base once the glue on the skulls has dried out, and that will give a real nice cracked earth effect. And then I'll build up from here, and there's going to be some probably dead tufts and things on top at the end. But I'm going for a fairly consistent, fairly plain in some senses, basing scheme to use across the miniatures that will also match in a little bit with some of the gaming mats I've been using at the moment. So fairly basic, nothing too difficult to do. But hopefully if you do subscribe, you'll see what I do with these miniatures and what I do with the basing, as we go on. So that's the kind of routine. Now, just showing there about, I don't often show how I get the sort of texture out of the pot. But with these pots, it can be quite useful. Get a brush you've seen there, stick it through the back of the pot like you can see, and it holds it open for you, so you don't have to fight with that Games Workshop lid trying to close down on you all the time. So a bit of a tip there. So back to my rant about why I'm put off 40k 9th edition. I've done some videos on the channel before about, are Games Workshop games getting too complicated? Now they absolutely are, because prepping for this game I've got in a few weeks, we're doing 2,000 points, a little mini tournament type thing. I had to sit and go through 5 or 6 books minimum to try and plan my Death Guard and Allied Knight army. And that got even more ridiculous when we looked at the latest Q&As that have come out. Obviously, 4 or 5 weeks ago, an add-on got announced where Death Guard points got dropped for unit add-ons, and it was like, whoa, celebrate. Oh no, that might not be true. Then another update comes out a month after that, and yes, it is true. So great, I get more models, I suppose. But that's 2 updates in the course of, a couple of months. I recently played a 2,000 point Death Guard army tournament, not quite recently, a few months back, which I talked about on the channel. And I thought, brilliant, I can use that same 2,000 points. No, I can't, because the rules are completely changed and everything's updated. I then considered, prior to playing the lads in Leeds, going to another tournament, the same place I went to. And I got completely put off, not because of the shop itself or anything, but because when you look at their tournament pack, there's since been a new campaign book for you to get. So I only managed to go to one event with the campaign book that I had to buy, which is now defunct. You can use it obviously in your own way, but it's now defunct and you need to get a new one. The rate of book creep, book bloat, whatever you want to call it, in 9th edition is ridiculous. You shouldn't have to take 10 books to do a game. All of the stratagems, all the Q&As, all the whatever, it's just bonkers. Now, looking in the background there, you can see I've started writing an army list. This is the first time I've written an army list on a piece of paper for about 10 years. Now, I know this will change. However, the joy of going onto one book, opening it up, reading through and thinking, right, what's my HQs? Writing it down, writing the points, writing the upgrade. Yeah, flicking through the book and thinking, how's this going to work in with the others and things. But the sheer joy of being able to use 2 books that you've bought to do your army list with no other FAQs, points updates, tweaks, changes, whatever, is fantastic. Now, 7th edition was renowned as not being a very good edition, apparently. I didn't play too many games of it. I was playing a lot of bolt action at the time. A couple of the guys picked up 7th edition. I did as well, did the army from it. Played a few games, probably less than a dozen, and then really didn't play it until 8th came out. So I don't have a massive background of 7th edition, but reading through this rule book and doing a couple of small tester games, and that's all I've done, Yeah, is 7th edition as good as 9th in terms of the base rules? No, it isn't. However, what it hasn't got is all the convoluted add-ons that give the confusion. So the rules can afford to be a little bit more in depth because your army lists are simpler. Now that might be because it's just Marines versus Marines, so you can keep simple basic army lists and just play for the fun of the game. But it is so refreshing to just have one book that your rules come from and be able to write an army list on a piece of paper. I typically use Battlescribe for 9th edition, and that's fine. You know, it's actually really quite an interesting system or method of making your army list. But it's so nice to be able to do this. It feels like at the moment Horus Heresy has got it right, and it almost shines a light on the fact of how badly 40k 9th edition has got it. How can they fix this? Well, look, there's rumours of 10th edition, and to my mind, I know that would upset a lot of people, but it needs to be done. I think the disappointing thing is when you look at 9th edition, there's still some armies that have never received a codex for 9th edition. Yet there are other armies that have had 2 or even 3, I believe, in the case of Space Marines, have had 3 codexes in that edition. Workshop need to learn from this. I think there's too many people getting upset about what they've done to 9th edition. That when 10th comes out, they need to take a real lesson from what they've done to Horus Heresy. Pare it back to basics. If you're going to have a real convoluted system of stratagems and whatever, have that for tournament play and just let the normal guys and normal girls who play 40k on an average daily basis have a nice simple game that you can have fun with. And that's what Horus Heresy feels like. It is a nice simple game that you can just have fun with without having to be a mathematician, a rule statistician, memory like you're in Mensa, etc. So that's kind of my ranty thoughts, really. I know that is quite ranty, but touching on the Death Guard, actually, I love the Death Guard background, always have done. I love where they came from. That's why I chose to do Death Guard for Horus Heresy, and I picked up the Mark III Marines because it's more fitting with the Death Guard kind of imagery, and then the 40k models use a lot of Mark III armour that they've converted up, so I've used those. What I really like in particular is how you can see here, what I've done is I've done my army list from the main bit, then I've read the Death Guard special parts and then bolted on the extra points that you can have from the extra abilities of the Death Guard. So some rad bombs, some of the rad hand flamers, those kind of things. And I really like how they've done that. Literally 2 pages of tweaks to make your Marines distinctly different from other chapters Marines. That's all it needs. When you look at what's going on Instagram particularly, because I have a browse through there and see how people are converting up their models. When you see what's on Instagram, you can see how people have tweaked their armies, and they are all looking very visually different and within the army very different. And I think that's all you need. A couple of pages, it's brilliant. Now I've gone through and I've just shy of 2,000 points, which is fantastic as well from the fact that this was bought from one Horus Heresy box. A couple of the pieces I've ordered, another Contemptor Dreadnought, a Forge World one, some other bits there. So I am rambling and waffling now, which is my want to do as we're doing these things. Just some thoughts, just some wittering, and I will leave it there and leave it at that. But just to say, look, 40k in my mind, 9th edition, dead. I am going to play it, but that's because the guys I play against want to play it. I have no drive and desire to play 9th edition whatsoever. I'm really excited about Horus Heresy. I will still be doing 40k because it's still a great background and models. So keep watching the channel. You will see some 40k content. You will see me start doing these models. You can see how the bases have set there on these. So yeah, thanks for listening to the ramble. Like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz if you enjoy it, and hopefully I'll see you again.